responsibilities will be to answer owners' questions about their monthly statement. You will have access to Promise, so therefore you can print an owner's statement. You'll learn how to do that in your tutorial. The property managers do not have remote access to Promise, so they'll often ask you to print those statements for them. If you're talking with an owner and they have a question, go ahead and talk to them. Do your best to answer their question about any particular charge or income. If you can't answer their question fully, then have their property manager give them a call. You will want to forward a copy of the statement to the property manager and probably the owner as well, so they can see it while they're talking to the owner. Another item that will definitely come up on your to-do list is called a landlord reference or a verification of rent. Sometimes it'll even just say at the top VOR, so it's a little tricky. From time to time, you might receive a request from another property management company to verify the details of one of our tenants. This would happen, for example, if a tenant is moving out and their new prospective landlord would like a reference, and then that would be us. It would also happen if the tenant's trying to buy a house or get a different type of loan. If someone calls in, go ahead and have them fax us a form that you can fill out. We really don't give out verbal references over the phone. You're going to print a tenant statement from Promise, fill in what details you can, check with their property manager to see if there's any comments that they want to add or anything different, and then fax that back to the company that's requesting the reference. Let's talk a little bit about property files. The Real Estate Commission oversees our office by doing random, unannounced audits. We need to be prepared at all times for them to come knocking on our door. Having proper files for each house is essential to passing an audit. These files are required to be kept at the main office. Each property manager may decide to keep a copy of their files at home as well, but the files at the office are the official ones. Let's go through a sample property file. I've even got one here for you. You, as the office manager, will be creating a hanging file for each rental house. When you open the file, so here's what they look like. We usually put a tab, and we have a little label maker that puts the name of the file on it. This is going to be the property code. You'll learn more about that in your training, but it'll basically be the first 4 letters of the street name, the house number, and the owner's last name. So you're going to print that out with the label maker, slide that into the tabby. When you open the file, the first thing that you're going to find is that file's checklist. They can be printed out and filled out, and it's also going to be part of the owner information worksheet, I believe. Things that would be in that section, you can work that checklist to make sure it's all together. The first set of paperwork is going to be the owner and property items. Let me get this organized here. So these are going to be just in the front of the file. These are going to be the loose papers at the front of the file, and they're going to be specific to the owner or to the property. In other words, you would not find information about a tenant here. Please make sure that the documents in this part of it are in the order of the checklist. The Real Estate Commission actually requires that. Here's some items that you might find in the owner section of the file. The property management agreement. This is the contract between Blue Apple and the owner. It gives us the right to manage the property, spend the owner's money, sign leases on their behalf, collect the rent, and get paid. You would also find in this top section of paperwork the owner information worksheet. This is a form where we note information about the property. It would also include the owner's contact information, bank account information, the owner's social security number, things like that. You would also find in this first section the lead-based paint disclosure. If a property was built before 1978, we are required to fill out the form and give it to the tenant. Paint that has lead in it is dangerous to people's health, so the government wants to make sure that the public is informed. The fine for failure to have this form in a file is $10,000 per property. So this is big time stuff. We got to have our files in order. Other items that would be in this part of the file, this is the owner's section of the file, would be information maybe about the homeowners association, letters to or from the owners, like a printout of an email, information about utilities, things like that. All right, going back to our little sample file here. After you have your loose paperwork, that's the owner's section, you'll find a folder, and that's going to be the tenant file. At the top of the tenant file, you'll see the tenant's name and the property code of where they live. So let's go through the tenant file. Again, on the inside cover, you're going to find the tenant's checklist, and that is that checklist for move-ins that we talked about earlier that you process through in order for the renting agent to get paid the leasing fee. So that's going to be here, all checked off and written on. As you go through the file, in order, you should find these items from the checklist. The lease agreement. In this case, it is in order. That's great. The lease agreement is the contract between the owner of the rental house and the tenant. It establishes the rental rate and terms, the length of the lease, and the responsibilities of each person. At the back of that, you'll find the brokerage disclosure to the tenant. We're required to tell the tenant that we are an agent for the owner of the house. And that form does that for us. Next thing you might find, and I'm just working my way down this file, is the application. The tenant fills that out, and that supplies their contact info, their reference info, things like that. Next would come the lead-based paint disclosure form. The lead-based paint form has to be signed by the tenant and the owner. The next thing you might find is a printout of an email that would be written approval of the tenant and the lease. That email would be from the owner, so they're approving that tenant. We keep written proof of an owner's approval of a lease just in case we ever need it. Next thing you might find is the credit report. It might look something like this. Rental Services sends us the information they find out about a tenant, and then we keep it in the tenant's file. This is another version of what the credit report and rental services information might look like. You can even see it's got their name on it there. Next would come a copy of the tenant's check. Maybe just something like this, a black and white copy. We use that if we ever need to reference their bank account information or something like that. Next thing in the file, I love that this is in order, I didn't even check this, is the walkthrough form. When the tenant moves in, the property manager will do a walkthrough with the tenant and document the condition of the home. This walkthrough is then compared with the condition of the home when the tenant moves out to determine if there's been any damage.